Hi everybody, welcome to week 4 of Wedge Unlocked. This is our last session with you guys and we hope that you enjoy it. So today we're going to be talking about branding, and these are the things that we're going to cover in today's session. So we're going to have a little look at what branding actually is, and then we're going to talk about why it's important for different organisations and companies. We're going to look at visual branding and look at some different examples of visual branding, and then cover brand components. There's 4 different brand components and we're going to talk about all of those. So first up, what actually is a brand? A brand is a set of features that distinguish one organisation from another. So a brand is typically comprised of a name, a slogan, a logo, or a symbol identifying design, brand voice, customer experience, the people that are employed by the brand, and more than that. So branding actually refers to the overall experience a customer undergoes when interacting with a business. So that could be as a shopper, as a customer, as a social media follower, or even just a passerby. So there's lots and lots of different things that comprise a brand.
So as Abby's just said, branding covers a consumer's or a customer's overall experience of your brand. So absolutely everything basically that a social media follower, or if you're in a store, like a person in the street walking past, sees about you plays a part in your branding. So the very common misconception is that branding is just your business name, logo and slogan, and like the visual of those. So branding isn't just it's not just about imagery, basically. It's about everything that your brand includes, from your logo to your website, your social media presence. So not just the visual side of it, like the content that you're putting out, anything that you share on your story that's also not your content. You need to be really conscious of if that aligns with your brand values, which you'll cover a little bit later on. Your company dress code also plays a big part in your branding, which you probably wouldn't really think about, because you would make your logo design and think of your name, a nice website, and then you think what your customers see you wearing and how you present yourself doesn't really matter. But the fact is, if we were both sitting here wearing a suit, it would be a completely different feel to if we were just wearing what we're wearing now. So Wedge Collective obviously has quite a informal and kind of casual appearance to consumers, and that's what we like. That's how we like to be seen. So it's quite a relaxed thing. If we were sitting in an office in a suit, obviously everything would feel a little bit more formal and serious. So in short, again, branding is the way your customer perceives you when they think or hear your company name, service or product. Everything that they think they know about your brand, including factual information, such as the things that you put out there. So for example, bright yellow packaging, which you're probably aware of, especially being in Greater Manchester, is from Selfridges. And the emotive element of that is that it's luxurious. So the physical yellow bag would be the factual information. The graphic designer has chosen that colour. And then the emotive side is the advertising that Selfridges have put alongside that for that iconic bag. Like very simple, very bold design, makes you think of like luxury and those high-end brands.
So we're having a little talk about brand power here. So when you need to leave a note, do you use a sticky paper or a post-it? When you're ordering a fizzy drink, do you ask for a cola or a Coke? When you're searching online, do you use a search engine or Google? And do you vacuum or do you Hoover? So these are all brand names: Post-it, Coke, Google, Hoover. But we're actually have gotten to the stage now where we've replaced them with the generic actual terms for the language. So everybody says, oh, I need to hoover the floor. I say it like 10 times a day. Nobody uses the term vacuum cleaner anymore. We all say Hoover, but of course that is the actual brand name, like Henry Hoover.
I feel like a lot of them are really iconic. Like obviously everybody says Google it, even if you're using like Safari.
Yeah.
But Hoover, I didn't even know that was a brand name until like quite recently.
Yeah.
Because you just think Hoovers are just you'd say a Hoover about like a Dyson. But that's actually a brand name.
Yeah. And Post-it again, what else would you use instead of Post-it? So you can see the power that these brands have actually at the stage that they've got to now.
So this is just one example of something that happens like really, really commonly. So obviously on the left there's a pair of Skechers trainers, and on the right is a pair of Balenciaga trainers. They look pretty similar, but their examples would be even more closely designed in the visual in these, but the Skechers trainers obviously are £70 and the Balenciaga ones are a lot more expensive at £495. And the reason that we've shown you these is because they're obviously brands that you probably already recognise, but they're marketed, or their brand is being put together in quite a different way, probably with quite different audiences, but they're putting out products that are very similar to each other. So if you think about Skechers is presented to be it's presented to be a good quality brand, very like practical shoes, comfortable shoes. Maybe their target audience is a little bit older than yourselves, and they're also set to be good value for money. Yeah, affordable shoes. But I think the focus of that brand is more on like the comfort and the functionality of the shoe rather than the design. Whereas Balenciaga is obviously a quite new fashion house, whose main element is design. They're obviously marketed to be a very high-end brand, and it's one of the quickest growing fashion houses. Even though their product is essentially the same as the Skechers one, people are willing to pay more than 5 times as much to have Balenciaga written on the side of the shoe when it's basically the same. There's nothing really to say that the Balenciaga shoe is a higher quality than the Skechers shoe, but the way that their brand has been put together and the way that it's being marketed makes it appeal to people who are willing to spend a little bit more money. I know if somebody give me £500 in my hand and said, which one of these shoes do you want to buy? I'd probably buy the Balenciaga shoe.
Yeah,
you do the same. Obviously it would be more sensible to buy the Skechers shoe and keep the rest of the money, but the reality is that we've all been tuned to choose the brand that is kind of marketed as the more desirable brand. So it's not just with shoes and clothing. If you think about makeup, for example, you would probably desire to have something from MAC Cosmetics more than you would something that's like Superdrug's home brand. And obviously at the moment you guys might be looking at like these high-end designer brands and they're not in your price bracket, but you probably one day would like to be able to go and buy a Chanel bag rather than a bag from a high street store, which is definitely what we feel like, and it's all because of the way that the branding has been put together.
Yeah. So why is branding important? So branding promotes recognition, obviously means that people are able to recognize you quickly when they see you. Your brand is what sets you apart from the competition. So again, like going back to those Skechers shoes, those two different brands. Strong branding generates referrals. So obviously, looking at Wedge Collective, if we've got that very strong brand, people think of us quite quickly and would be quick to refer us to other people. And it sets expectations. So you're kind of setting the standard for everything about your organization with your branding.
So visuals speak to your potential customers quicker than words do, that should say. The initial impact must count. So obviously if you're scrolling through social media, the thing that you look at first on Instagram, for example, is the image. And then if you're interested in the image, you'll stop and you'll read the caption. If you're walking down the street and you see a billboard and it's got a really uninteresting visual on it, you're not going to pay attention. But if it's got a really interesting image, you'll stop and you'll take notice, which is exactly what your brand needs to do to your potential clients. Because realistically, if you're scrolling like through a social media feed, or if you're shopping in a store and there's a t-shirt that's got a brand on that you think is quite weak visually, you're probably not going to stop and consider purchasing that brand. Yeah. So obviously as a graphic designer, I've done quite a lot of branding for a range of different companies and sectors. But across all of the branding that I do, I've kind of put together this tick list, which is something that I refer back to a lot. So originality, obviously you don't want to be just copying other brands with your actual branding. Products might be similar. So for example, I've done the branding for different like clothing companies who all create like t-shirts. Obviously they could all be quite similar, but the actual branding behind that company needs to be original to that company and kind of prove their values. Simplicity, obviously things that are simple and bold, like the next point, stand out amongst the crowd. So they'll stand out on social media and grab your attention more than something that's like really busy. Accessibility means it's something that people don't usually think about when they're drawing or designing things, but accessibility is things like using a font that people with like additional needs can read easily. So people who are like partially sighted, for example, some fonts are easier for them to see than others. So you should think about that when you're putting your brand together. And things like colour combinations, so particular colours set against different colour backgrounds, for example, will be much harder for some people to see. I don't know if you're aware of like people who have dyslexia sometimes put like an overlay over their writing, which I used to do in school, and it just means it's a little bit easier for them to like consume that information. But this all plays a part in branding as well. Continuity, we're going to cover a little bit later on as well, basically just means that whatever you put out in like your logo design or in your social media needs to be carried across every aspect of your brand up until meeting your customers like face to face for a meeting and having a coffee. So we've now told you that we want Wedge Collective to be quite casual and approachable and kind of laid back. So when we do go and meet our clients, we'll meet them in like a coffee shop and we'll be wearing just on regular casual clothes, whereas someone who would want their brand to be more formal might only meet their clients in an office setting wearing suits and would present their work all much more formally. And another really important thing is when you create your brand, you need to consider the whole identity and not just the logo. So if Wedge Collective were just to have a logo, I feel like our visual branding would be a lot weaker. So if you think about, again, going back to fashion, but if you think of places like Gucci, for example, the Gucci logo is obviously iconic, but the Gucci pattern that you see on like people's scarves or t-shirts and stuff, which is the little G and the dots, and it's kind of like a diamond pattern, that is just as iconic, maybe even more iconic than the logo. So it's instantly recognizable from something, even if it doesn't have their exact logo on it.
Yeah.
So this is some branding that we've done for a bar in Liverpool. Before this, they kind of just had, it was like handwritten text, which was also quite clean and simple, but it wasn't accessible to everybody because it was obviously just someone's handwriting that had been blown up really large. So this kind of covers the points that I just laid out as my checklist. So it's quite simple and it's bold, it's accessible, and it is original to this brand. This is a chauffeur company. Again, nice and simple. We tend to limit the amount of colours that we use in a logo. So you can have, for example, like our logo is just black and white, and then you can create a colour palette for your brand. So you're always alternating between the same 5 or 6 colours. This is a logo design for a YouTube blogger, YouTube channel person. So Aleka wanted to have her own kind of face as her logo because obviously that's what people see when they're watching her YouTube channel. So she wanted that to be recognizable. This probably doesn't fall into the like simple section, but it's definitely a bold design. And the colours again are obviously teamed in quite a pared-back way. This is branding. It's not a logo design this time, but this is branding for Kirsch Kicks, which is in central Manchester. It's a clothing store. So this K that you can, the Kirsch Kicks text and then the double K is their logo, and they just wanted me to create some other visuals that they can use as their brand identity, as we just said about like the Gucci pattern or the Louis Vuitton pattern. So this is applied to different things, which then has obviously become recognizable for them.
Go on.
So this is another clothing brand that's based in Liverpool. Obviously just very, very simple text, and then a little play on the M and the W being like a reflected image. And Creative Balance is it's an art therapy service, and they originally had, it was like a cartoon bird or something as their logo, and they had that for a few years, and it kind of worked for what they were doing. They were doing just kids classes, and their brand has now developed, and they're working with like quite corporate clients. So they wanted something that had a little bit more of a formal feeling, a little bit more grown up and sophisticated, so we came up with this for them.
So a little insight into our own branding. So we're called Wedge Collective, as you know. We actually came up with this brand name, our company name. We were on the train we were going down to London, and we were watching Ratatouille. We actually had to create a company name because we were doing some courses actually in Bury, at the Bury College. And before we came up with the name, it was actually just us two, but we needed to sort of formalize it. It was personal to us, the name, and it was easy to remember. We didn't know anybody else with any sort of similar name, and it obviously wasn't registered to another company. That was quite important.
We did the word.
Yeah, so the way that we came up with Wedge Collective was basically, we didn't know how to come up with company name. We kind of just thought this was the best way to do it. We both wrote down like lists of things that were important to us and that we cared about. And one of them,
that we wanted the business to
create, basically. So we wanted to create opportunities for ourselves and for other people. We wanted to create content that we liked enjoying and that other people liked consuming. A lot of it was we wanted to create like money, income for ourselves to be able to help other people create income for themselves. So we had money down, and then we thought of the different words that surrounded money, and one of those was wedge, and then we grew that and played around with that a little bit and came up with Wedge Collective. Jodie produced the logo really, really quickly. It was a couple of minutes, and at that point it was just very, very plain. But the way that we've evolved it and applied it since has meant that it's really grown, and that's what's made it work.
So I guess for the kind of stage that you guys are at, you can probably there are obviously online things like free services that you can use, like Canva.
Yeah.
You can use things like Canva or like a free version of Photoshop and have a Google around those things, but you can basically create yourself a logo that's really simple, and you probably don't need to be a professional graphic designer to do that, even though I probably shouldn't say that as a graphic designer. But it's not actually your logo that creates your really strong branding. It's the way that you apply your logo to your brand. So I think we've got, how do I go next? So we've got some examples of our own branding. So we've got that really simple, just square with rectangle with Wedge Collective written in it, which is obviously quite, again, going back to that checklist, is really clean and it's simple and it's bold and it's accessible because of the font that we've chosen. But the way that we've made ourselves stand out and always be recognizable is using a few kind of tricks to uniform our visual presence on social media and on our printed stuff. So we always have the Wedge Collective logo on the bottom left of our posts, on our photographs, and on our like documents that we give to clients. It's always aligned to the left. These colours that you see here are from a palette. So as I just said, it works really well to have a logo that's just one or two colours because it's a lot more bold. And if you think of Balenciaga, they have either a black or a white version of their logo generally. So we have got a colour palette here of 8. Is that 8? 8 colours, and we alternate any colour that we apply just between those 8 colours. 8 is quite a big colour palette to choose. Some brands use like 3 or 4 colours, and they'll only use those colours, which can seem quite limited, but in the long term, if you can kind of adjust your whole kind of presence to include your logo and a small kind of select colour palette, when you go on, for example, our Wedge Collective Instagram, when you scroll through, everything looks really uniformed, not in a really strict way, but if you'd have to kind of pay attention to notice that it was all uniform, but it looks really strong when you land on the page, which is what we also advise all of our clients to do as well.
So a strong brand is made up of 4 key components, and we're going to cover all of these now. So the first one is your mission, the second one is your vision, then you've got your values, and you've got your voice. So we're going to talk about the mission, and that refers to a mission statement. So if you've not heard of this is a declaration of your business's core purpose. So it's supposed to be a short, simple few sentences that basically explain the business's actual purpose for existing. We've got some examples here. So these are some examples that we found. So you've got Chanel, to be the ultimate house of luxury, defining style and creating desire now and forever. Then you've got Apple, our vision is to create better everyday life for people. You've got Nike, to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. So you can see here, they've basically condensed down the very mission of the company into one sentence, and sometimes even, 10 words for Apple or whatever it is. Apple's is particularly strong, I think.
I think it's also worth noting that when these companies started, well, they will have updated this as they've grown, but when these companies started out, their mission probably was a little tiny bit longer than it is now. And obviously, as they've become more recognised, they can kind of chop that down to just be a really straightforward, just like one sentence or like 10 words or whatever, because we already know the impact of that brand. But we are going to set mission statements as a task this week. So if your mission statement isn't as short as Apple's or Nike's, don't worry about it. As long as it's like a couple of sentences long and not like a paragraph, that's what we're looking for. But we'll go through that in a second.
So refer back to this, it'll be on the sheet as well. So when you're writing your own mission statement, it should incorporate the following: what you do, how you do it, who you do it for, and how it helps them. So those are the 4 kind of steps that you can take when drafting up a mission statement, and make sure it kind of ticks all those boxes. So a few notes about mission statements: they should always be in the present tense rather than a statement about future events. So it's not actually about what you hope to become in the future, it's all about what you're doing now. They should basically summarize your company's unique points. So you need to revise the statement until you can kind of make the points as quickly and clearly as possible. We're advising that you limit yourself to like a couple of well-formed sentences. So like Jodie just said, not like a whole paragraph. And as we stated before, they're not only created once. As a company evolves or as a brand evolves, the mission statement can constantly be revised. So we've actually revised ours at least once, I think, over the past couple of years to kind of update it to the point where we're at now. So tweaking your statement ensures that it constantly parallels with the direction of your company and the direction of where you're headed.
So just as a bit of guidance before you guys do the task, like, don't stress about it. I think the best way to do it and the easiest way to do it, to break it down, would be to look at these 4 bullet points, which will be on the task sheet that we give you, and write a sentence in response to each one. So what do you do? For example, mine would be, I do graphic design and I create branding for various companies. How do you do it? So give a sentence to that and a sentence for the other 2, and then you can kind of just condense that down as you go. And then obviously the shorter that it becomes, probably the more impactful it will become. So vision is the next core component of branding. So unlike, while your mission statement was talking about what you can do right now, your vision is a vision for the future. So you're outlining what your business will become. So it's an aspirational description of what businesses would like to achieve or accomplish in the mid-term or long-term future. The vision answers the question, where do we want to go? So we're not going to set this as a task this week, but if you want to write your mission statement, you can then probably take your vision from it quite easily. So your mission statement is where you are currently, and your vision is probably what you're already planning in your head for your business to be. So it's probably quite easy to put together, and I think we've got some examples.
Yeah, so Apple's, we spoke about their mission statement a minute ago, and then their vision statement, they've said, we believe that we are on the face of the earth to make great products, and that's not changing. So it was a very like final, finite, impactful sentence there. All they want to do is make great products and continue to do that.
I think another important thing is that you will have noticed that all of these statements are really like confident and quite blunt. And the reason for that is, while as a consumer you've probably, well, I know that I didn't before I started learning about branding. I never looked up like Nike's mission statement or vision, but I had consumed lots of their products before. But the reason that these things exist for your business is for your business to be able to go into, for example, to retail in like a larger shop. They'd have to look at your business plan, which would involve this. To get investment to get money to set up your business, you'd have to present a document that has all of this stuff on it. So it can be quite difficult, I think, to be like, we are the best company on the planet, but that's basically what your mission statement and your vision needs to say about you and why you're unique from everybody else that's doing something similar. So it's probably going to be a little bit difficult at first to just write down something that sounds a bit big-headed, but that is what it needs to be like.
Yeah. So moving on to, I think it's the third component of branding, values. So values are the standards that guide the way that you do business. They sum up what your business stands for, they influence your business culture, and they drive how or why you do things. Yeah, so for us, in terms of Wedge Collective values, I think that we did do an activity of this a couple of years ago as well, and they probably haven't changed much. It was really, I've spoken about it before in these sessions as well, it was really important for us to be like honest and open and transparent with everybody that we deal with. I know I was particularly sick of dealing with agencies and businesses that tried to like fob you off or like hard sell stuff to you or upsell stuff to you. We just wanted to be really down to earth and just deal with people as people basically. And as we've spoken about before, it's quite important for us to be quite informal. We're not like suits and ties. We're usually wearing tracksuits. And these are the values that we've woven into our business, and they're the things that are important to us. So an example of the core values of Adidas are, we'll cover these, performance. So sport is the foundation for all we do, and executional excellence is a core value of our group. Passion is the heart of our company. We are continuously moving forward, innovating and improving. Integrity, we are honest, open, ethical and fair. People trust us to adhere to our word. And diversity, we know it takes people with different ideas, strengths, interests and cultural backgrounds to make our company succeed. We encourage healthy debate and differences of opinion. So the way that Adidas have done it here basically is they've nailed it down to like 4 words: performance, passion, integrity and diversity. And I think that's a really good way to do it, and a really good way to just make it condensed and make it so those kind of values can feed into every single activity that you do. Every product or service that you create needs to kind of hinge off the brand values.
You'll also probably find a brand's values on their website in some kind of form, maybe not laid out as obviously as this like values and then a bullet points underneath, but there'll be some kind of paragraph that outlines what their values are as a business. And for us now running a business, it's really important for us to check out other businesses' values before we go ahead and do work with them. Because if we didn't, we could jump into a contract or a project with a brand that we later find out either has values that conflict with ours, or it could be that they like back organizations or like causes that we're quite against as a brand and also just as people. So it's always really important to look at these kind of things before you go into business with someone or before you collaborate with someone, because it can end up being quite a difficult situation to try and resolve otherwise.
So the right time to define your brand values is as soon as you can after validating the idea. So just like the way that Adidas did it, find 3 or 4 words that sum up what you stand for. So your values are the foundation of everything else that you do. Be true to yourself, be prepared to iterate them if needed, and stand for something. So values are literally just that. They're like, what do you stand for?
Which you'll obviously already have
those as people.
Yeah.
You'll already, you want to be diverse, want to be inclusive, all of those kind of things. And if you're running a business, you need to make sure that those are kind of echoed in your business as well.
Yeah, and if your business is realistically going to work long term, your brand's values should also reflect just your own values as a person, because they'll come naturally to you. So I think our main kinds of value that we had starting out was to be really honest, because I think there's a lot of instances where people give business advice or business training and it's not always as kind of transparent as it needs to be in order for people to learn. Like if someone were to ask us a question about what was our income last year or how well did we do, like we'd answer that question, but a lot of places we could probably try and kind of fabricate that, or smooth over like the rough patches and stuff like that. So as a person, the values that you have yourself will reflect in your brand, and that's kind of the best way to figure them out to start with, I think. And then as your business develops, there'll be things that you want to add in, or maybe words a little bit differently.
So a little note about brand values. A great company is one that stands for something. Customers know what to expect from it. They know this because they receive a consistent experience when using the products. Customers' experience is driven by the behaviours of the product and the people behind it. This consistency comes from having a core set of brand values. Your values will always drive your behaviours. Everyone has values. It's how we make judgments about the right thing to do. So values represent what you consider important in life. They are what makes you different from everyone else.
So the final component, and probably the one that you're going to be working with most often, is your brand voice. So your voice isn't what you say, but it's how you say it. It sets you apart from your competitors and gives your audience insight into the people that you are behind the brand. It develops trust and allows your audience to gain a valuable insight into who you are and what you value. Should your audience feel empowered, informed, advised, amused, guided, or something different? So the way to look at this would be, for example, your favorite brands on Instagram or across social media. You'll see that their voice is kind of the same across all those platforms or outlets. And this is how those brands have captured your trust. So one brand that comes to mind when I think about this is ASOS. If you look on their social media, they do posts that are like hard sells. So they'll upload a product and say this is now available to buy online. But they also have like, they put humor into a lot of their posts, and it's quite like relatable to their audience base. So their audience is like young people, both male and female, aged like 16 to 30 or something. So we're obviously the generation that spends like the most time on social media. We scroll through, we look at memes, we send them to our friends, and if ASOS are creating ones that we think are funny, that's obviously a really good marketing tool for them. And it also sets them apart from other businesses selling clothes and high-end fashion brands, because they're more relatable. And it's kind of like looking at like a friend's post on Instagram when you see like a funny meme or something like that.
So we created this scale basically to help you think about your voice and different brands' voice. And you can see down one side you've got friendly, funny, optimistic, simple and youthful. And then the other side you've got formal, serious, realistic, technical, mature. And then these are like a sliding scale. So if we think about it in terms of like Wedge Collective, we're very on the friendly side of the scale rather than formal. And funny and serious, we're just a little bit over halfway. Optimistic and technical, and then pretty youthful. I think this probably reflects Wedge Collectives, doesn't it? I'm not sure. Probably. So it's a really good way to either like notice other brands' voice, or to think about your own business and your own brand, and where do you want to be on this sliding scale.
So the 4 components that we've just covered, we're going to set the mission statement as your task for this week. But if you obviously at a later point, when you're further on with like planning your business, if you want to look back at the other 3 components, it will just be really useful to kind of keep a track of, because these 4 components, although it might sound a bit boring at the moment because branding is usually thought of as quite like a visual thing, it plays a part in like our everyday, like what we do every single day at Wedge Collective. So even if it's like someone's emailed us an inquiry, and we'll think about, oh, how should we reply to that? And then we'll think about our brand values, and that will inform how we reply. Or we'll think about our voice and we'll reply kind of in that way that we've just said, so informally, but a little bit more serious than funny, etc. So these will be really valuable to look back on, even though we're only going to set 1 as the task this week.
And that is Wedge Unlocked Module 4 complete. We hope that you enjoyed it. As we said, we're going to email you and you'll have the task sheet, and then we will send you out a Zoom invitation, and we'll speak to you on Tuesday, and we'll go over everything. Thank you.